there are any final remarks you would like to share with the board, please complete one of the testimony cards located on the table as you entered into the room, the auditorium, and then return it to a University of Louisiana system staff member. But that could be taking place as we go forth. But for the time being, first order of business is for Carol to call roll, please.
Mr. Barry Busada.
Here.
Dr. Jimmy Clark.
Here.
Mr. Steve Davison. Ms. Lola Donahoe.
Present.
Ms. Joe Leatherman.
Present.
Dr. John Noble Jr.
Here.
Mr. Al Perkins. Mr. Dana Peterson.
Present.
Ms. Elizabeth Pierre. Mr. Virgil Robinson.
Present.
Mr. Mark Romero.
Here.
Ms. Christine Russell. Mr. Joe Salter.
Here.
Mr. Brad Stevens.
Here.
Ms. Julie Stokes. And Ms. Bailey Willis. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Carol. At this time, Supervisor Salter, would you please lead us in an invocation as we begin this afternoon's proceedings?
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity we have today, and we ask for your leadership and your guidance as we make a decision regarding the leadership at McNeese. Lord, we're thankful for these two men who have become semifinalists, and ask that you would direct us as board members, Lord. Choose the one that would be right for the university and for the students and the citizens of our state. And again, thank you for your many blessings and ask for forgiveness of sin for Christ's sake. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Supervisor Salter. Our first item of business is to receive a report from the McNeese State University Search Chair. UL System President Rick Gallo served in that capacity. So Dr. Gallo.
Thank you, Chairman Clark. In February, the search committee held its initial meeting on McNeese State University's campus to begin the preliminary work to find the next president, as well as to gather input from the campus community on qualities that they would like to see in the next president. On April 4th, the committee met here in Baton Rouge to review applications and select semifinalist candidates. After thoughtful discussion, the committee unanimously decided to invite 4 candidates: Dr. Andy Benoit, Dr. Shadow Robinson, Dr. Wade Roose, and Dr. Alan Vital. These 4 candidates were interviewed on the campus of McNeese over a 2-day period, April 16th and 17th. In addition, they met with faculty, staff, students, alumni, and community members who provided comments to the committee. After much thorough discussion, the committee unanimously decided to recommend 2 finalists for consideration by the board: Dr. Andy Benoit and Dr. Wade Roose. Before we begin today's interviews, I want to thank the committee members for their service. Board members, Dr. Jimmy Clark, Ms. Elizabeth Pierre, Mr. Barry Busada, Mr. Steve Davison, Ms. Lola Donahoe, Dr. Jimmy Clark, Ms. Lola Donahoe, Dr. John Noble, Mr. Dana Peterson, Mr. Mark Romero, Mr. Brad Stevens, and Ms. Bailey Willis. Also, the constituent members rounded out the committee with their experience and hard work: Judge Charlotte Bushnell, Judge James Kane, Dr. John Condos, Mr. Sam Gill, who's the student government president at McNeese, Ms. Heather Griffith, Mr. Kevin Guidry, Ms. Nicole Moncrief, Mr. Ryan Navarre, Ms. Angela Quinnen, Mr. Jason Rochelle, Mr. Dennis Stein, Mr. Gray Stream, Judge Gene Thibodeau, and faculty member Dr. Jimmy Trahan. Lastly, I would like to commend McNeese State University for the outstanding organization and for hosting the semifinalists, committee members, and our staff. That concludes my report, Dr. Clark.
Thank you, President Gallo. At this time, we will entertain any final public comments that were submitted. Dr. Calais, I have one card up here. Is that
Dr. Trahan?
It is.
Yes, sir. That's it.
Okay, I do. I have a public comment request card from Dr. Jimmy Trahan, who did serve on the committee as the representative from the Faculty Senate. And Dr. Trahan, if you would please come to the table and provide your comments.
Thank y'all for allowing me to serve and to comment here. I know y'all are tired of hearing probably from me, but I wanted one last chance. I think I'd be remiss to not say this to the entire board. We'd be the 3rd president under which I have served on the faculty senate. And I would just like for the board to take into heavy consideration a commitment to shared governance. The current McNeese faculty senate have struggled with feeling that over the course of 2 administrations, and that's no complaint or negative about any particular person, but that is something in this process that I would like to not go unnoticed, unquestioned, or undervalued. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dr. Trahan, and we certainly appreciated your time and contributions to the selection committee. Are there any other public comments to be made at this time, Dr. Kelly? All right. Well, then before we begin our first interview with Dr. Wade Roose, I would like to share with you the framework for today's interviews. Dr. Roose will provide an opening statement, and then the board will pose questions. Following the public interview, we will enter into executive session to further dialogue with Dr. Roose. Once his interview has been completed and the executive session has concluded, the board will return to this setting to open session, and then we will interview Dr. Andy Benoit. After Dr. Benoit's executive session is concluded, the board will remain in executive session to discuss any final personnel issues. The board will then return to open session for discussion and a vote. Are there any questions from board members at this time? All right, hearing none, we will proceed with the first interview. So at this time, I would like to invite Dr. Wade Roose to the table. President Gallo will provide a little background.
Dr. Wade Roose, PhD in economics from the University of Illinois at Chicago, is an experienced academic leader currently serving as the executive vice president at McNeese State University. With a background in higher education leadership and economic policy, he holds a master's degree in economics and an MBA from the University of Illinois at Chicago, along with a bachelor's in business from Nichols State University. In his current role, Dr. Roose spearheads strategic initiatives to tackle enrollment challenges and revenue diversification. Notable achievements include organizational restructuring, academic program review, and fostering transparency at McNeese. Previously, as vice president of university advancement, he consolidated departments, increased assets, and raised funds through sponsorships and grants. At Northern Arizona University, roles included associate dean and interim director, where he focused on faculty development, accreditation, and community engagement.
Thank you, Dr. Roose, for joining us this afternoon. Before you give your opening statement, I think it would behoove us all if members would introduce themselves to you. So if I could start with our student board member, Bailey Willis, and ask you to start the introductions.
Okay. What strategies?
No, not just introductions.
Oh, I'm
We're not doing
sorry.
questions yet. That's all right.
My name is Bailey Willis, and I am the student board member, and I attend Northwestern State University.
So we know they have a strategy session.
Yeah, yeah.
Hi, I'm Julie Stokes. I'm a former legislator, along with my friend next to me, from the New Orleans area and alumni of UNL.
My name is Joe Salter. I'm from Sabine Parish and serve on the board.
Lola Donahoe, I'm from Natchitoches, Louisiana. I'm a supervisor on the board.
Virgil Robinson, I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana, and I'm a retired banker. Mark Romero, Iberia Parish.
Brad Stevens, Tangipahoa Parish. Good seeing you again.
Jimmy Clark, Lafayette Parish.
Dana Peterson, New Orleans.
Joe Leatherman, Baton Rouge.
John Noble, Lake Charles.
Barry Busada, Shreveport.
All right. Thank you, board members, for the introductions. And at this time, would you begin with an opening statement to us, Dr. Roose?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, can you hear me? We were warned about this mic not working. Is it working? Can you?
Thank you for checking. but
Okay.
It's all
Wanna get
good.
a mic check
We
on it right at
appreciate
the
that. That's
beginning.
right.
So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, thank you. Thank you for your advocacy of higher education. Thank you for your service on this board. And thank you for the time you've invested in this process. We are truly humbled and honored to be in front of you today. It's been quite a journey, and we want to share a little bit of that glimpse of that journey with you. But before I do that, I would like to provide or ask my bride if she would be interested in introducing herself. At the last meeting, we took a different route, so we're gonna try it this time again.
All right.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
I'm not sure if your mic is that, well, then it must be on.
Hello?
There it is. Good.
Okay, so good afternoon. I'm Angela Roose. I am the other half of Team Roose. I was a practicing neonatal intensive care nurse for 22 years. I now find my days filled with events supporting McNeese throughout McNeese's campus, as well as throughout our community. I'm humbled and honored to be here supporting Wade through this process, and I thank y'all very much.
But let the record reflect once again, the much better half of Teen Ruth, Teen Roose. But anyway, we want to give you a little bit of a glimpse of the journey that led us to this table today. Mine sort of began in the marsh of Golden Meadow, Louisiana, in a childhood that was rich with love and not money. It was rich in love and not money. But that childhood stressed an importance of work ethic. We worked hard and we played hard at a very, very young age. And those life skills, those childhood life skills, I still deploy and that work ethic here today. The most important person in my life and the biggest advocate of higher education was my mom. My mom was smart enough to go to college. She was smart enough to go to college. She wanted to go to college. She dreamed about going to college. Life threw different challenges to her. Different obstacles got in her way, and that dream was taken away from her. But she, I will tell you, she was bound and determined that her children would go on to get a college education. In 1989, what I thought was going to be a very glorious day, Mom dropped me off on the campus of McNeese State University on the corner of Joe Dumars and Common Street. And I remember that day so vividly. She was so emotional. I couldn't understand from the time I was 6, 7, 8 years old. All I heard about was you're going to go to college and you were going to worry about what you're majoring in. The idea or the question of whether or not you're going to go to college, never the topic of discussion. We were going to go to college. I'm pretty sure she had no idea how we were going to pay for that. I'm pretty sure she didn't understand what the entrance exam looked like, but she was bound and determined that her children were going to get a college education. So when she dropped me off on that campus in 1989, I couldn't understand the emotion. I really couldn't understand the emotion. But with the benefit of hindsight, it became very apparent to me that she realized that this was the first step to a much better life for all of us. And it truly has been. It truly has been. So she drops me off on campus under the care of Coach Sonny Jackson, who worked us even harder than my grandfather did shrimping. And we won together and we lost together. And again, more life skills were embedded to go along with the lessons that we were learning in the classroom. Not long into that, Coach found out that his services were no longer needed. And as a good Cajun loyal guy would do, I said, that's fine. I'm quitting. I'm going to go shrimping or work offshore like most of my high school buddies are doing. They all got nice trucks. I'm over here eating in the cafeteria. So I'm going to take that route. But Coach Sonny Jackson found out about that. That was before internet or cell phones or text, but it wasn't before stickies. And they had a little sticky on my door, go see Coach. And he very professionally articulated, as only a coach in the 1980s would, that if I ever hear you say you're going to quit school again, I'm going to whip your... And I believed him. He said, you can quit football. You're not real good. But if I ever hear you say you're going to quit school, I'm going to whip your tail. And that kept me in school for 3 years on our campus. I eventually did transfer and took the job to work in the marine transportation business and traveled back and forth to McNeese, to Nichols to finish my first degree at Nichols. But make no mistake about it, the formative years, those first 3 years, I lived on the McNeese campus and was an undergraduate at McNeese. I enter into the workforce. The next person that sort of keeps me moving down this path or this journey into higher education was Mr. Charlie Bruce and his wife, Wheezy, mentors in my life, principals of a company that hired me. He knew that I had a desire to continue my education. And not only did he have a desire, he stressed it. And not only did he stress it, he paid for it. and allowed me to go get my first master's at the University of New Orleans at night. Took me 8 years to get that master's because, again, it wasn't online. You'd work all day in the oil field and you'd drive to New Orleans and take a class at night. And back then, the master's program timed you out at 8 years. So I can tell you, if you take one class a semester, you can make it in 8 years back then. And we did that. So I owe so much of this journey to Mr. Charlie Bruce and his wife, Weezy. While at University of New Orleans, I met Dr. Ronnie Davis, the next instrumental person that kept me on this trajectory or on this journey into higher education. Dr. Ronnie Davis was an also instrumental person in my life. And the reason I keep telling you about people, because this is the business that we're in. It's the reason you serve on this board. We come across students at critical points in their lives where they just need a little bump, or they just need a little urge, or they need a positive word. Sometimes we take it for granted, but we better take it seriously because what we say matters. And these people mattered and moved me forward down this journey into higher education. I'm sure if you look back in your life, you can think about a coach or an English teacher or an English professor or a math professor or an accounting professor that kept you moving down that path. I want these folks to know how much they meant to me. Dr. Ronnie Davis taught me managerial economics. It was the first time it was about go and no-go decisions. I thought this really makes sense. It was a hybrid between finance and economics, and I really developed a passion for that. Dr. Ronnie Davis also knew Barry Chiswick at the University of Illinois, Chicago, and that's how I got my pathway into Chicago. So after getting my master's at the University of New Orleans, selling a company, exiting industry, I went up to Chicago to get another master's and doctorate. I thought we were going to come right home, right? I already had one master's. I figured I could go knock out that doctorate in about 4 years and come home and start a hedge fund and learn everything that we would have learned in the marine transportation business about hedging diesel fuel and hedging oil futures to start a hedge fund back home. But like most of my plans, that's not what happened. Ended up getting an opportunity to get on board with the Federal Reserve, an enormous experience that left us 10 years in Chicago, an amazing time in Chicago. It is during these 10 years that we fell in love with higher education. You see, it was while I was there that I started teaching one class a semester. One class a semester at night. And I would come home and Angela would always say, "Why is it that you smile brighter? You're more fun to be around the night after classes." And then Angela gets involved and we start going to commencement ceremonies and we start going to end of semester gatherings. And we start hearing about these students' dreams and aspirations and the small role we played in it and realized we wanted more of that. So we took the leap of faith. We took the leap of faith and went into higher education full time. Never was part of the plan and have been blessed to this day because of it. Unique research opportunities. I guess everybody thinks their research is unique, but unique research opportunities led us to Arizona, where we were able to really get into estimating demand curves, feasibility studies, and economic impacts for a certain culture. Native American nations located in Arizona. In theory, we talk about closed economies, but in practice, we don't see a whole lot of closed economies. But a true example that gets close to theory is some of these Native American nations in Arizona. And as we studied these nations and disaggregated the data, you can really see the importance of how a closed economy and the parameters that drive economic growth. And the parameters that drive economic growth, there is no question about it. The empirical evidence is overwhelming, are two basic things. And those two things are labor productivity and the ability to attract the capital stock or increase the capital stock. And I guess you don't have to know, or you don't have to ask me, what's the main driver of labor productivity? The main driver of labor productivity, when empirically estimated in a closed economy, is there's nothing close, is education, specifically higher education. So once again, we're in a position to realize good Lord's watching over us. We've some kind of way stumbled into a perfect situation where our research matters. It's meaningful. We're teaching. Everything's lining up perfectly. We're in Arizona, northern Arizona, not in the desert where it's really hot. Northern Arizona, 7,000 foot of elevation, 100 inches of snow a year, blue skies, it's beautiful. And our mothers' health began to decline. It's about that time when Dr. Darrell Burkell reaches out and offers us the opportunity to come home and get involved in higher education in the great state of Louisiana. We jumped on that opportunity and got back here right at a time that we will never forget, the academic year of 2019, 2020. In case you need reminding, in March of 2020, we shut our world down. We shut our university down. We pushed everybody online. Well, if you're really driven by student experiences and interaction with faculty and research and thinking about the frontier of knowledge, that is not the best situation to be in. But it happened in March of 2020. But in Lake Charles, that was just the beginning. In Lake Charles, in August of 2020, Hurricane Laura decided to come through and wipe out our infrastructure. Now we're online. We're online, and there's no more infrastructure. There's no more internet. Internet's wiped out. But just in case that wasn't enough, in October of 2020, Hurricane Delta, another major hurricane, decided to come and wipe out the little bit of remaining infrastructure that we had left. And then in February of 21, we had an epic freeze. I'm looking at Doc over there because I was side by side with him with most of these. In February of 21, we had an epic freeze. In May of 21, we had a historical flood, and we lost both of our mothers in that 18-month time period. Very difficult time in our lives. Very, very difficult times in our lives. A very difficult time for our school. Those sequences of events are all true and are often spoken about. But what's not spoken about enough is the response. On September 18, classes restarted on McNeese State University's campus. September 18, after a major hurricane hit us at the end of August. Now you may ask, how is that possible? How is it possible to start classes and reopen when there is no infrastructure to start classes or reopen? We're online. There's only one answer. An amazing faculty and staff willing to do whatever it took to make it happen. A whatever it takes attitude was taken in every aspect of our university, and classes started again in a situation that is almost unbelievable. Now you may think again, I've got plenty of examples and I don't want to talk too long here, but let me give you one example. We got a 3-story parking lot on our campus. We turned that in to a generated hotspot for Wi-Fi. We had students drive up in their campus and open their laptop so they could get access to the portal, so they could finish their class assignments, so they could finish that semester. We entered into a partnership with AT&T, who gave us hotspots that we were able to hand out to faculty and staff, that if they could get far enough and get access to a mobile tower, they could get to our portal, upload their assignments, and get the semester to complete. Things that are not reported on May of 2020. Keep in mind, March of 2020, campus shuts down. August of 20, Hurricane Laura. October of 20, Hurricane Delta. February of 21, freeze. May of 21, flood. What people don't talk about is on May of 21, 785 degrees were earned at our graduation because of an amazing faculty and staff and community. In addition, in the academic year of 22-23, we began a very difficult task and exercise of right-sizing our university to make certain we remain financially solvent to serve a smaller population due to the exogenous shocks of these events. And we are well on our way to accomplishing that objective as well. I'm going to conclude by simply stating I'm proud to be a member of the McNeese family. A family consisting of faculty, staff, students, and community that continue to pull together to make sure that we advance our university to be able to change lives generations to come. Looking back, I'm humbled that I played a small role on a leadership team that navigated these challenges and obstacles over the past 4 years. And I'm excited about the future of our McNeese. And in general, higher education for Louisiana. I think we all realize we're in a paradigm shift. The challenges will continue to come, but to me, that represents enormous opportunities. I hope I'm in a position to lead my McNeese to capitalize on some of these opportunities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time and for your comments, Dr. Roose. Appreciate it very, very much. At this time, I'm going to ask board members if they have questions that they would like to present, and maybe Dr. Leatherman, would you like to start us?
Sure. Hi, Dr. Roose. So you talked a lot about difficult times. On theme with that, my question for you is going to be, in difficult budgetary times, what do you as a leader do to inspire confidence, raise morale, and maintain institutional effectiveness?
That is a very timely question. So we have been in the middle of a budget sort of crisis now for 2 years. So I can tell you what we've actually done and what we could have done better. One of the things we've done is that we've made it a priority to realize that we only had so much one-time cash and create a longer sort of pathway to make sure that we can glide to a soft landing before we can start growth strategies. So we put in place a series of very difficult cuts and realignment that allowed this one-time money to adjust this to make a shorter, a longer glide path so it wouldn't be so abrupt. One of the things that we have not done very well, given the time we spent on campus last week, is actually communicate the wins that we've had on that very difficult budgetary situation. Some of our faculty and staff have not been informed enough to know that, hey, we are ahead of a lot of our sister institutions because of the pain we went through. You should be happy and better times are ahead. So in order for morale, I say pretty often that we all know the management slogan that culture eats strategy every day. So where we have failed is not being able to communicate in a positive light of what is just around the corner. We have taken a lot of the blows over the last 2 years to stabilize our budget. We've used $12 million of one-time money over the last 3 years to lead us to a balanced budget this year that we don't have one-time money in. But what we do have is interest that we've been able to get on cash. Now, we know that's going to disappear at some point when Federal Reserve starts to normalize interest rates. And when that happens, we have to be aware that there's still a structural deficit beneath the surface that we're going to have to address. But we've stabilized it enough that we can start thinking about growth after we finally stabilize enrollment, which will hopefully be this year or next year. So to answer your question, you've got to attack the budget directly. You can't hide behind it. These are very difficult times. We were very transparent. We did 13, I think, community sort of town hall meetings throughout our campus to know everybody knew what was coming. I think where we messed up that has hurt culture is that we should have explained better that we're through the worst part and our better days lie ahead, and allow our faculty and staff to celebrate some of those wins as we move forward.
Okay.
Thank you. Bill, you got a strategy question?
Yes, here we go. Which strategies would you implement to support student retention, graduation rates, and overall student success?
Yes, that's a great question. So on campus, we talked about 3 metrics that really matter: recruitment, retention, and job placement. Recruitment, retention, and job placement. If we measure that, that's going to change the behavior of our organization, because you can't manage what you don't measure. We have got to measure those 3 things. It needs to be a scoreboard, like when you're walking into a gym and you see the final score. We need to be able to get a benchmark, measure them, and then be able to celebrate wins as we move forward in those things. In terms of specific strategies, we've got to create a more frictionless enrollment management process in terms of the recruiting side. In terms of the retention, I think our advising office can be improved. I like the idea that some of our sister institution takes advising from a centralized advising model all the way to 60 credits. Right now, we do freshman advising and then we hand them off into the college. I don't know that we make the best handoff there. I think ULL is taking them all the way to 59 or into a certain GPA that then they could go advise into their college. I think that's a huge retention possibility if we can really strengthen up our advising office and allow that to go up to 60 credit hours. And then in terms of, what was the last part of your question?
I'll
I got the
repeat the
first
question.
2.
Which strategies would you implement to support student retention, graduation rates, and overall student success?
Yeah, so the overall student success, I think it's an idea of being, that's the easy one for me. I think you know Sam. I mean, I'm very involved with our students. I love being around our students. I think that's important. I think I've said, and people have disagreed with the fact that our president house is still destroyed. We have a beautiful home in Big Lake. However, if we're blessed with the opportunity to lead this university, I think having a presence on campus with the students, even in the cafeteria occasionally, walking in the quad at midnight, having pizza parties in the dorm unexpectedly matters. And Angela has agreed that if we're blessed to be in that position, that she will at least a few nights a week move in the dorm, and we will bring that presence to campus. So that has, to me, that means a lot in terms of student engagement and being able to listen and sort of like we said in the opening, drive students down the path of their desired discipline.
First of all, we appreciate your interest in the job and congratulate you on the fact that you were one of the finalists. Academic excellence is one of the main things that we're concerned about, you're concerned about, and others in similar positions. How do you prioritize academic excellence while balancing the diverse needs of students and faculty and staff?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think again, you can't manage what you don't measure. And I think if we absolutely measure job placement, that will strive academic excellence in certain areas that our local regional institutions need, right? I mean, if we're placing folks at a rate and we see their starting salaries increase, then we're ultimately doing our job. If we're developing the future workforce of our region, we should be able to measure that. We should see the value of our product going up. And that should be a direct reflection of academic excellence. If we see the value declining, that's a pretty implicit, I would say pretty explicit signal that we've got to change the academic curriculum to match what's needed in the market. So I don't think that is as subjective as some people may think or philosophical as some people think for a regional institution. I think we measure it. And if we're placing our folks and we see starting rates going up, then we know we're adding value. And that incline will mean that we're pushing towards the frontier of academic excellence. Thank you.
Mr. Robinson?
Thank you. Dr. Roose, you've had a chance to visit with faculty, students, staff, alum, business leaders about this position. After thinking about those discussions, what do you consider to be key issues for the next president, and how would you approach those issues?
So key issues that we've from the last week, and in addition to being on campus over the last, we've got a morale issue in our campus, and we can blame it on exogenous events. We can blame it on what we've been through, sort of in the opening statement. We've got a morale issue. My argument is that we can change that pretty quickly. You can flip morale relatively easily. And to me, one of the biggest things we can do is, again, get down into the weeds and truly sort of push this idea of communication throughout the entire university. I think you're going to hear, or I think some of you that were on our campus heard some of the issues regarding the lack of shared governance or the breakdown of shared governance on our campus. All right, the shared governance is a cornerstone to the foundation, right? Shared governance is the cornerstone to the foundation of the academy. And why is it so important? It's the idea that we together figure out these objectives that we keep talking about that are measurable. These are agreed upon objective, and then we delegate and communicate. But the third part of that we don't do very well, or sometimes we don't do very well, is also in most definitions of shared governance, is that we hold ourselves accountable. We've got to hold ourselves accountable. We can't just do the first part, the second part, and the third part. And I think if we start doing that, people begin to not wonder, what should I be doing? What's going to be rewarded? How should I act? What's actually going to get me better on my APR review? I think if clear objectives help to change morale and get us there pretty quickly. That's going to be the number one priority if I'm selected as the candidate of choice. Thank you.
Mr. Brasada?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Tell us about your vision for the university and how you plan to lead to achieve that vision.
Yes, so look, we've been through a hard time and we're not going to continue to lean on that. We're looking forward. So the vision is, how do we stabilize enrollment? We stabilize enrollment and thus stabilize the budget and continue to streamline the operation, which we've already started, to align departments and actually remove some of the departments. We're going to have to end up with a more streamlined operation that focuses on mission critical tasks, not just doing things because we've done them in the past. So the vision is to end up stabilizing enrollment, streamlining the operation to optimally support that enrollment, and then start focusing on growth strategies moving forward. And the way we're going to focus on growth strategies, we're going to support and finance the programs that truly are going to show academic excellence, because the value of the market's going to show that that value's out there. So I look at it, and in 5 years from now, we had a streamlined operation. We went through that in year 1 and 2. We started investing in growth strategies. We can dream that Coach Wade's still there, but that won't be there. But we could dream that, and we continue to have all of this community engagement on our campus. We start getting students excited to be back, in that marginal student that we're sort of losing in the midpoints, are coming back to our university and are excited about the future of where we're going, and lives continue to get changed because it's leading to economic mobility and better lives for the next little Cajun boy that we're going to go get in Hackberry, maybe not Golden Meta, but we'll try Golden Meta. That's my vision.
Dr. Roose, I want to follow up just a moment with that question. You indicated that stabilizing enrollment is, key to your vision and the success of implementing your vision. Can you give me a sense of what you mean in terms of size of enrollment? Is there a certain expectation, a physical plant circumstance?
Right.
Where
So-
do you see
so
McNeese?
when I talk about, I'm not talking about the strategy or buying
No.
names or any of that. I'm talking about right now, last semester we had 6,061 students in the fall. We like to measure the fall because you graduate them in the spring, and that kind of skews the report. But in the fall, we had 6,061 students. With that 6,061 students, there's a structural deficit still of about $3 million. We've balanced that budget this year simply because we've been very, very proactive in a cash management system to take the cash from all of our local banks and went meet with each one of them and said what was good for this university would be to sweep that into LAMP accounts where we're making about 5% on cash. That's generated almost $3 million, and it's masking a structural $3 million deficit. So moving forward, we know we don't want to, but we know we have to streamline it and get it in a situation. Hopefully we can stabilize enrollment where it doesn't have to go any further. And I think we can, by the way. I think we're turning the corner there, and we stabilize it and move out. And if interest rates stay where they are, I'm trained as an economist. At some point, the Federal Reserve is going to start cutting rates here. I think it may be into next year. They thought it was going to be 6 rate cuts this year. That's definitely not going to happen because of the inflation expectation. But at some point, we will get a reduction on what cash is playing. And when that happens, we've got to be positioned to make sure we can pull our way out of here. And the best way to do that is to hope that 6,061 is near the low. And then we push our way out of that.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you. Thank you so much.
Other questions, board members, anyone? All right. If not, then let me read this following statement. The Board of Supervisors for the University of Louisiana System may meet in executive session to discuss personnel matters associated with this search under the provisions of Louisiana Revised Statute 42:17. While in executive session, the board may not make any motions or take any votes. May I have a motion and a second to go into executive session, please? So moved by Supervisor Dunho, and I saw a second from Supervisor Basada. All right, all in favor, say aye, please. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. We will now move into executive session. I believe we're going to be adjourning to room 1-165, right over here. So.
Thank you, guys.